How did the Russia hoax change the trajectory of our country? The author of Breaking the Law, Alex Marlow of Breitbart, explains in 60 seconds or less.
This is one of the iconic Lawfare moments of the whole book. The FBI first got the warrant to surveil Michael Cohen, Trump's fixer, lawyer, the rat, his Gmail account via the Justice Department Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. The investigation in the fake, bogus Russia hoax. An investigation that never should have taken place because there was no collusion. It was a big hoax. And it was because they were investigating Cohen for possibly acting as an unregistered foreign agent and his involvement in the Russia scam. That's where they got turned on to sifting through his Gmail. And that led to all sorts of a spider web from there. And that led to Southern District of New York getting warrants to access Cohen's Gmail as well. And that's where we were. There would be no conviction, no convicted felon branding unless Michael Cohen's Gmail was accessed by the government because of the Russia hoax, full stop.
All right, guys, I hope you had a good weekend. It was beautiful where I was. Got to spend some time with family on the water. It was a perfect little weekend. August, though, I think we need a 3-day weekend. I'm going to start lobbying the president for a 3-day August weekend. I don't know. I feel like we need it. But what a way to kick off the week. The president this morning, big press conference. And by the way, I'll just bookend this by saying at the end of the week, he's going to have this big summit with Putin in Alaska. That's going to be amazing. I mean, just in terms of like this opportunity, Trump really wants to end this war. And I have a feeling there's a lot of back and forth with the Europeans. Like somehow my view with the Europeans is I appreciate you guys not doing anything and telling us what we should do with our money and our troops. But until you're ready to put some folks on the border there, yeah, thank you. We don't need to hear from you anymore. But this is going to be huge. I think there's a real opportunity for peace, but it's not just overseas and other things. The president taking the case to the nation's capital. And I've been there, guys. This is, for anyone who's wondering, this is not some newfound thing. When he gets motorcaded around, he's disgusted by the graffiti and the violence and the homelessness of D.C. He wants us to be proud, and he wants other people to be proud when they come to our nation's capital. Okay. By the way, before I forget, because I will, Alex Marlow is coming up in just a little bit. He is the editor-in-chief of Breitbart. We're going to talk a lot about Lawfare, the Russia hoax, who should be on the list to be dealt with. You know what I'm saying? But getting back to this, he held this big press conference this morning. Let me show you, and the thing that I thought was fascinating, total whole of government approach. What do I mean by that? Doug Burgum's there. What does Doug Burgum talk about? The park police. They play a big role in those around the monuments, the National Mall, the Smithsonian's, whatever, right? They have a huge police force. A lot of folks on horseback, whatever. Pete Hegseth talking about mobilizing the National Guard in D.C. You've got Kash Patel was there. Pam Bondi was there. They literally were bringing all of the resources of the federal government. And Janine Pirro, the new U.S. attorney in D.C., they're talking about prosecuting this. Because here's my point in all this. Walk down the streets of D.C. any day. Actually, probably don't. And right now, if you live in a lot of sections, it's scary, especially gangs run wild. And the left will tell you that's ridiculous because what they've done is they've stopped prosecuting them. They've stopped going after them. The cops won't go after them anymore. So the statistics look great. That's the thing. I'm going to talk about this with Alex Marlow in just a second. But this is the president announcing this this approach that he's taking and why. Take a listen to the president.
We're going to be removing homeless encampments from all over our parks, our beautiful, beautiful parks, which now a lot of people can't walk on. They're very dirty, we got a lot of problems. But we've already started that. We're moving the encampments away, trying to take care of people. Some of those people, we don't know how they even got there. Some of those people are from different countries, different parts of the world. Nobody knows who they are. They have no idea, but they're there. We're getting rid of the people from underpasses and public spaces from all over the city. There are many places that they can go, and we're going to help them as much as you can help. But they'll not be allowed to turn our capital into a wasteland for the world to see.
And this is, as I mentioned, it was the whole of government approach. But part of this is prosecuting these people who do bad things, not just turning a blind eye, which is what happens in D.C. and frankly, cities all throughout the country. U.S. Attorney Janine Pirro making the case how they're going to handle it. Take a listen to her.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, Madam Attorney General, and to all my partners here. We all want the same thing. We all want a safe city. We want a safe capital. We want to be able to bring our families here. We want to be able to come and enjoy the history that makes this place great. And unfortunately, we are not in that position right now. And Mr. President, I want to thank you for taking the step that we need right now to make criminals understand that they are not going to get away with it anymore. And I'm not going to stand here and go over and over the cases. But what I can tell you is this. I see too much violent crime being committed by young punks who think that they can get together in gangs and crews and beat the hell out of you or anyone else. They don't care where they are. They can be in DuPont Circle, but they know that we can't touch them. Why? Because the laws are weak. I can't touch you if you're 14, 15, 16, 17 years old and you have a gun. I convict someone of shooting another person with an illegal gun on a public bus in the chest. Intent to kill? I convict him. And you know what the judge gives him? Probation. Says you should go to college. We need to go after the D.C. Council and their absurd laws. We need to get rid of this concept of, no cash bail. We need to recognize that the people who matter are the law-abiding citizens. And it starts today. But it's not going to end today, because the president is going to do everything we need to do to make sure that these emboldened criminals understand we see you, we're watching you, and we're going to change the law to catch you.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Jeanine Pirro making it very clear. It's over. We're coming after you. We're going to prosecute people. I love this. I'm so excited. From someone who lives just outside D.C. who likes to go in there, this is what I want. Let's get back. This is like Rudy Giuliani and the broken windows. If you tolerate it, it's going to flourish, and it has. It's disgusting what's gone on in the city. And as I said, the left will tell you, oh, it's getting better. Yeah, because they've stopped prosecuting and they've stopped counting. That's what's going on. By the way, before I bring in Alex Marlow of Breitbart to talk about the Lawfare, what's going on around the country and what happened with the Russia hoax, just a bit reminder, we're going to have a big discussion with our buddy John Solomon on Wednesday on the Russia hoax, and then we're going to break down the latest polling on Friday with Robert Cahaley. By the way, thank you to everyone who has been going to Apple and Spotify. Even if you're watching on Rumble or X or YouTube, please go to Apple and Spotify and just give us a 5-star review. It totally helps the show grow. So thank you for the people who've done that. It's really appreciated. And by the way, always join us at 6 o'clock in the YouTube chat. It's fun to go back and forth with some of the folks. And my free newsletter is out every Tuesday and Friday, SeanSpicer.com. Before I get, and I had a great rant over the weekend. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe and notification button. Go back and check it out. We had a little fun jab at Kamala Harris that you'll hopefully enjoy. So take a listen to that. Before I bring in Alex Marlow, though, I got to tell you, I was out grilling this weekend. I had my Riverbend Ranch steaks. It was amazing. I did all of the New York strips last night. That's it. Just the strips. Huge hit again, but you know what you put on your steaks, your vegetables, your eggs in the morning? A little Firecracker Farm hot salt. Oh my gosh, what an amazing kick. It is so great. This is the stuff that Megyn Kelly and Joe Rogan were talking about. It is sold out like 5 times. And guess what? It is literally back in stock right now. It's a family-run American business. It's so good. The thing is, if you're someone who likes a kick, like some flavor, I don't know how to describe it because it's not hot. It's powerful. It's flavorful. It's got these 3 peppers, Ghost, Reaper, and Scorpion. I guess it is a little hot. They call them the 3 Kings, by the way, and they don't disappoint. It's a balanced, deep kind of flavor that adds a total kick. It was sold out before Father's Day. It's back in stock. It's small batch. So, and this is what it looks like. You get this grinder, but it's not. It's just you press the button. It goes right on your food. I did 2 the other day, 2 clicks. That might be a bit much. I would start with 1. That's just my little warning. So go to firecracker.farm, not edu, not org, firecracker.farm. And if you are a listener or watcher, you've got a special discount right now. Use code SPICER. That's just for our listeners and watchers. But I'm telling you, it's going to add a total kick to what you're eating. Firecracker.farm. All right. Now, once you've eaten and you're ready to go to bed, you know what I'm going to tell you. At the end of the day, I can't go to bed anymore without having my Beam Dream Powder. One scoop of Beam in some water, microwave for 30 seconds, 30 minutes later, I hit the pillow, I'm out, wake up feeling refreshed, ready to go. Beam has been an absolute game changer for me because I've taken melatonin in the past, magnesium. This has all of that, plus reishi, apigenin, L-theanine, all in one amazing, amazing blend. I am a big fan. I'm going to grab it, as you guys know, of the cocoa cinnamon, but all the flavors, the brownie, the peppermint, they're all amazing. I'm not, like, I actually have the brownie one upstairs too. Go to shopbeam.com and use shopbeam.com/Spicer and use code Spicer for a special Patriot discount of 40% off. This is a great American company. You cannot get better and on a journey to wellness without having a great night's sleep. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code Spicer for 40% off. All right, without further ado, our first guest, Alex Marlow, the editor-in-chief of Breitbart and the author of a brand new book called Breaking the Law. Alex, good to see you again. Congrats on the book. I always wonder, what's the next breaking? It's like Bill O'Reilly has killing, and then you fill in the blank. What's breaking now? It's now Breaking the Law. Congrats on the book. It's been out in a week, I guess, right?
Yeah, almost a week. And thanks, Sean. I don't have a lot of great ideas. It's interesting because Breaking the News, my first book, that was a no-brainer because the news media was getting broken because the establishment media became worthless. You witnessed this firsthand behind the podium. But it was watching that happen, and also the play on breaking news, as in we report news original at Breitbart that others don't get. I thought that was kind of cool. And then Breaking Biden, which was my second book, I think it just kind of worked for people in more of a poetry sense. That was a little harder to define what that's about, but I pitched that around as not my favorite of the titles that I had for my idea of doing a Biden takedown. No one on the right had done a big comprehensive takedown of Joe Biden. I thought someone should do that because he could win again, and maybe a third term, maybe a fourth term. Who knows? Guy's crazy. And that was the title that everyone liked. And then Breaking the Law was a no-brainer because Lawfare is the new, I would say, the most powerful way of fighting back against MAGA from the resistance crowd. It's no longer Hollywood. It's no longer the establishment media. It is no longer academia. It really is the Lawfare against President Trump and his supporters. It's been the most effective tool against the MAGA agenda. So Breaking the Law, there it is. But I don't know what's next. Breaking the Huddle? Maybe I'll write a sports book.
Oh, that's actually interesting. All right, we're gonna have to brainstorm. Maybe we can crowdsource the next Alex Marlow book title. So let's break down a lot of what's in the book. But as you know, this morning, President Trump came out talking about the law in D.C. And the funny part about this, Alex, is that I don't think someone said to me, "Is this a distraction or whatever?" I go, he's been talking about D.C. and crime since the first term, and when he drives around, I think he sees stuff in D.C. Graffiti, homelessness. He obviously anecdotally hears stories about crime and says this is disgusting for our nation's capital. What do you think about his take on this?
Yeah, I love it. Trump, I think, operates in two modes that are, I think, convergent here. The first thing is he just likes to do stuff. He likes to rack up wins because that controls the media narrative. He's a high energy guy, obviously. Anyway, I remember you telling me about your schedule and your press secretary. It sounded pretty grueling. But he knows that this controls the media narrative. So they're reacting to him and not the other way around. So that's very effective. And when he comes up with little ways to notch a W quickly, he's always going to take them. It seems like his approach. And I love that approach. But there's this problem in all of our cities, and I write about this in great detail in Breaking the Law, how a guy named George Soros, familiar to everyone in your audience, has bought up all of these DAs, et cetera, across the country, so that most of our major cities are crime-ridden. They're trying to let all the criminals off the hook and out of jail. They're getting filthier. They're somehow getting more expensive, somehow at the same time. They're terrible places in general, going in the wrong direction. So there's one city on earth where Trump can directly make a difference immediately, and that's DC. The laws are on the books to allow him to do that. And considering this is our nation's capital, this is conceivably one of our most beautiful cities, a place with our history, a place that represents America to the rest of the world, like it or not, and he can do something about it, I absolutely love it. It's pure Trumpian, and I can't wait to see what he does.
Okay, I got two more questions on DC, and then I want to get to the broader concept of lawfare. So I said this on the morning meeting this morning on the show that I do on YouTube with Mark Halpern and whatever. This to me is an opportunity. To your point, this is one area where Trump can do something directly in a city because it's not part of a state. It is the federal District of Columbia. But here's my broader point, Alex. This is a moment for Republicans to actually think way ahead. The Dems want to make D.C. a state, not because of voting rights, but because they want 2 additional Democratic senators for life. Okay, so here's my point, and I've been saying this for at least 5 or 6 years. When D.C. was created in the 1700s, they took parts of Virginia, parts of Maryland, created a perfect 10-mile by 10-mile square. In 1846, they gave back the Virginia part, Arlington County, Arlington and Alexandria, to Virginia without going down a rabbit hole. Bottom line is, so now what I would argue is if you really want to do something, Mr. President, carve out a federal district from the Lincoln Memorial to the Supreme Court and obviously around the White House and give everything back to Maryland. And then this crime issue would be Maryland's. The voting issue would be solved. Dems would couldn't say that they couldn't address the issue of voting rights. And you take two additional Democrats off. That to me is playing chess, not checkers.
So how about, would this include parts of Virginia?
No, Virginia was already given back in 1846. So if you look at D.C. right now, it's not a perfect square. It looks like
right.
Okay, but that's because Arlington County, the contribution of Virginia was given back. So my point is give back to Maryland everything but the National Mall so you still maintain what the framers wanted. So the framers said you had to have a federal district that was part of no state. So you carve out the National Mall, the White House, all the way past the Capitol and the Supreme Court. That's your federal district. It keeps the framers' intent intact and then gives back to Maryland, which was taken from Maryland. Therefore, the Democrats can't claim that voting isn't an issue anymore. Now they are part of a state as they used to be, and the issue is solved, and we take 2 additional Dem senators off the table.
Okay, I got a comment. I got an outside the box idea, but then I got a question back to you. So my comment is, in general, I think that there's no neutral body that can draw things. We're just not there as a society. There's no council of elders. The left would want, the New York Times editorial board to draw up any district. So if you win elections and you can change stuff, I think you're obliged to change stuff to benefit your voter base. So if that's what's happening here, I'm way good with that, and I think that that's just the way it works now in modern America. So I support your thinking, big league. Maybe even take it a step further and give those parts of Arlington County back to DC so that then Virginia could be more red. So all those blue counties that are making Virginia a purple state, which it shouldn't be. Most of Virginia is just salt of the earth Republicans, but it's you know what?
If I didn't live in Alexandria, I would agree with you. All right, here's my second question, though.
No, but I got to ask a question, though. Is it legal, though? Can you actually pull it off? Because if you can't,
100%. No. Again, I just want to be clear on the history of this. In 1791, D.C. was created, and they took part of Virginia, part of Maryland, and created a 10 by 10 square box. Yeah. And then what happened was, again, I could go down a rabbit hole on this, but the bottom line is Alexandria in particular felt slighted, and there was a slavery issue, just to put that on the table, that they wanted to maintain the slave trade, plus they thought they were being ignored. So Congress in 1846 said, fine, we'll give back all of the Virginia contribution to Virginia. That's now present day Arlington and Alexandria at Reagan National Airport. If you've ever flown in, you're actually landing in Virginia. But they gave it all back and said, fine, you take it back. Now all that exists is the Maryland contribution. And my point is the framers said we want a federal district. So you take that of which just government houses, i.e. the White House, the National Mall, and the Smithsonian, and Congress and the Supreme Court, carve it out, take out all the residential aspects of it, and give everything back to Maryland. 100% legal. It's already the precedent. That's my point, is the part of Virginia already was given back. So do that and get ahead of the Dems, because Beto O'Rourke and all of these guys are out there, James Carville, saying we've got to make D.C. a state.
Yeah, they've been saying that. It's not going to happen. I don't think that. It could if they get more power politically, but they don't have the. We're a ways off.
No, not yet. But that's my point. Is get ahead of the game, play chess. All right. Here's my second issue on DC, and this kind of I think gets to your book. This weekend, there's a leftist named Kara Swisher. She was on CNN saying that all of this talk about crime in D.C. is a right-wing talking point. And my point is, first of all it takes is walking down the street in D.C., Navy Yard, where the stadium is, and you see how many people are getting carjacked and gangs running wild. And what I believe has happened is that when you go talk to a cop these days, they've decriminalized a lot of stuff. They won't go after anybody anymore. The Dems have basically created a system where cops don't prosecute. Your point about Soros, they let all these guys off the hook. So the statistics look better. But the reality is that if you go talk to an average cop in D.C. and you say, why are you guys just allowing that gang to run ramshot down the road? It's because, well, we're not going to prosecute them anymore. They're going to get let off. So what's happened is the statistics look better in terms of crime in a lot of major cities. But the reality is, if you talk to people on the ground, because of Soros-funded district attorneys and the handcuffing that we've put cops under, that it's not really what's happening. The statistics are manipulated.
This is it. So this is an important point, and it's a point I make very early on in the book, is that the goal would be, if you prosecute more, which would actually reduce crime, it will lead to a drastic statistical uptick in crime in the short term, which would make the ruling class look bad. And that's the vicious circle that we're in these cities, because they're one-party states, or they're one-party, cities for the most part. There's almost no Republican presence in any of our major cities. There's only a handful of the top 25 most populous cities have any Republican presence at all. So, which means that if any Democrat just says, all right, we got to do it, we got to take on crime, and let the chips fall where they may, it's going to look like there's more crime immediately just by the virtue of them prosecuting and the data going up. And that's something that they're not going to do, because they're going to think it looks bad politically. So thus the cities will fester.
Exactly. And that's what they've done, is tried to manipulate the data. But I don't think the average person knows that, right? I don't think that when start hearing about these Soros-funded prosecutors, and what do you think the ultimate goal is? Like, I still have yet to understand. Like, so Soros comes in, funds all this stuff. Is it that they want a more leftist world? I mean, because I would argue, or I would think to myself, regardless of where I am on the political spectrum, even if I'm the craziest leftist in the world, why would I want more crime in my city? Why would I want a prosecutor that's letting everybody off?
Yeah, I don't think it really affects them, to the real plutocratic elite who control the Democrat Party, and that is who is controlling the party. And I go into a lot of detail of who funds the Lawfare in Breaking the Law. And it's a lot of names that are familiar to you, a lot of them who are not familiar to you, but these are people who do not relate to the world like the rest of us. These are people who are truly at a elite anointed status, and they're free from having to deal with most of the burdens of day-to-day crime that the rest of us are. So I think that's part of it. But to answer your question, there's two things that they're looking for here. And I don't know if you draw up a pie chart, what is a bigger percentage than which. But the obvious one is Democrat rule. These people are committed leftists, and the shoplifter vote is very powerful in the Democrat Party, particularly in major elections, not just the down ticket races, but in the big elections. The lower income people and people who have criminal records and things like that, these are all people who vote Democrat. So it's pandering for votes, and they want to stay in power. They find political power to be the most important thing in their life, more important than family, more important than faith, more important than their jobs. It is political power. That's what they're going for. And this is an easy way to get it. The other thing is, I think that some of the really bad actors here, the Soroses of the world, I do think they want chaos. I think they like the idea of a chaotic society. They don't like the idea of a conservative, organized society. There's lots of different rationales for why this is the case, but they are looking to undermine America's core principles with that.
Don't you think that's funny, though? I mean, not funny. It's probably sad. But your point on power, I don't think can be overstated. That I keep reminding people, if you listen to Carville in the clip I played last week on the show, or Beto O'Rourke this weekend, everything that they do is in pursuit of power. So on the census, they want illegals to be counted because gives them more representation. On the case of this law, like, it all comes back to, how do you get and maintain power for the sake of power? And that's, to me, just a dynamic that people need to be completely aware of, is that, I gave you my DC example. They use the cover of, we want people to have the right to vote. But it's really not, because I have a very simple, if you really want them, then the easy answer is take what was from Maryland back and give it back to Maryland. That's the easy answer, right? Instead of creating a new state of 400,000 people in D.C., but it's not, it's never about what they say it is, right? It's not about that. It's always about the pursuit of power. And I think in the legal world, it's the same thing.
That's exactly right. And let me give you a clear example that'll hit close to home for this audience. I write in the book that the left hates democracy. And so they're the ones who are the alleged stewards of democracy. And they're the ones who keep telling us that we're undemocratic because we like Donald Trump. But this is just classic Saul Alinsky, where you take your worst trait and then you accuse your opponents of having that trait because it neutralizes their attacks on you. Think about the way they handled the 2016 election. They tried to nullify it with the Russia collusion hoax. Obviously, a lot of people have a lot of doubts about the way the 2020 election was conducted. Now, I think some of the cheating that took place might not be the same as some of you in the audience, but I'll tell you, Joe Biden getting 80 plus million votes. I mean, come on, it's a crazy stat. And then as I walk through, 2024 was the most blatant attempt to rig an election in the history of the republic. The lawfare apparatus, the superstructure, was trying to jail the standard bearer of a major political party, trying to bankrupt him. And the elite of the Democrat Party were paying for it to happen. And everyone was going to Joe Biden's White House for visits the whole time to check in. We don't know what those conversations are. We just know they were happening. This all took place in 2024, and we've been very casual about this. These people hate democracy. They don't want the people to decide. They want to decide who leads us. And once you start understanding that fundamental, I think a lot of things start making sense.
So I want to get back to Biden in these cases that you talk about in the book. But before I do that, I was thinking about what you were saying in terms of democracy as you were just replying to that. Over the weekend, over and over again, these Democrats from sanctuary, I keep saying this, the Texas Democrats have fled to political sanctuary cities in states that led the way in gerrymandering. And I'm watching J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, this weekend talk about attacks on democracy. And I can't believe Kristen Welker of NBC actually questioned him and said, but your state led the way in doing this. And he said, yeah, but this is about democracy. So it's about democracy when it's Texas getting 5 Republican seats. It's good when it's Illinois gerrymandering for Democrat seats, when Massachusetts gerrymanders for Democrat seats, when Maryland gerrymanders for Democratic seats. So, but no one calls them out. And that's, to your point, they just use this refrain, attack on democracy, attack on democracy. Eric Holder used it. Barack Obama's attorney general, Barack Obama, keeps talking about it. None of them have a problem when they do it. I can't believe, though, and I the word that comes to mind is chutzpah. I'm like, how do you guys honestly look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm not going to get called out on this?
Yeah, it is amazing that they can do this, but it's because they've got this ecosystem where they're constantly propped up in the media. They're treated like celebrities. They're given, the more they lie, the more likely it is they're going to get a lucrative cable news punditry contract from CNN or MSNBC and a big book deal from a major publisher. And so they've been rewarded for being dishonest. So their main characteristic that is valued in the Democrat Party is not honesty. Truth is not a value on the left in this country. What's a value is whether or not they can just basically put their head down and run into brick walls on behalf of their cause. And so those people who can do that with the most resilience are the ones who are rewarded. And so you just have to keep putting your head down and ramming through. And if you do that, then you're going to get rewarded. But I think the point about gerrymandering is so big. How are we supposed to drop these districts? It's who's going to do it. It's the people who win. They get to do it. That's democracy. So hello.
That's a great point. It actually is democracy. It's being done by people who got elected.
That's it. That's what we got. I guess it's being a republic, but it's like, if you want to be specific, we should.
You know what? Maybe I'm going to make a T-shirt. Gerrymandering is democracy.
I want 10%, but you can do the rest.
All right. Hey, I'll give you 10. You came up with it. That's not a bad finder's fee. But one of the things that I thought was interesting, I want to get back to what I mentioned a minute ago that you brought up in the book, is that the 6 Trump cases.
Yeah.
Okay, which in themselves, each one of them, you could go down like a total rabbit hole and say, okay, let's look at New York. The idea that no one, again, I always said, you can hate Donald Trump as much as you want, but ask yourself with a straight face, do you think that conjuring up multiple misdemeanors that have expired in terms of the statute of limitations, creating a fake felony, and then telling the jury they don't need a reason to convict the guy, passes just the most basic set of jurisprudence. If it was anyone else, you'd laugh at it. But you write that all of those cases, the Georgia case, everything else, all ties back to Biden.
Yeah. And I'll go through that, but you must be living in my brain here, Sean, because I actually, last night I was drafting a piece recommending an investigation to Juan Merchan for the way the New York case was handled. There are two New York cases. There's a civil one with Tish James, who absolutely should be investigated, but also the criminal one with Juan Merchan, Alvin Bragg, Stormy Daniels, that case. And I just go through the absurdity of the legal arguments in that case. They're by far the worst of the 6 cases that I go into, and it's the only one that yielded a criminal conviction. And we need to start unpacking that. It's deeply unfair. There's not even 2 tiers of government in this country. There's 3 tiers. There's the normal tier. There's the James Clapper, John Brennan tier, where you break the law and then you get MSNBC contributorships. And then there's the Donald Trump one, where you do literally nothing and they try to jail you or they try to fine you hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, that is a third tier that's beneath the rest of us. It's pretty unbelievable that went on. But yeah, I write that all these cases trace back to Biden, and a lot of it is take the Fonnie Willis case in Georgia. So RICO case, she put your boyfriend on the case. He's a family lawyer, Sean. He divorces and prenups. Why is he on a RICO case? There's no reason for this guy to be on a RICO case. Not only does he get on the case, they're making all this money together and they're spending it on vacations, the two of them. He's going to the White House. In what realm would this nobody family lawyer get 2 8-hour White House visits unless he was talking about coordinating with the Biden White House about the case? The Alvin Bragg case with Juan Merchan. The big tell here that there was rigging from the top. This guy named Matthew Colangelo, who's the number 3 guy in the DOJ. This guy was in a spot to be a cabinet secretary, a Supreme Court justice, an FBI director. This is a pristine resume type guy at the top of a 100,000 person bureaucracy. He goes down, takes a JV role in Alvin Bragg's Manhattan DA courtroom, the type of job you get straight out of law school if you can't get a better job. Why does he do this? Because he's in a witch hunt against Donald Trump. Obviously, he's going to liaison back to the White House. I want to know what those conversations were. I want to know what the conversation was when who approached the guy who's number 3 of the DOJ and says, you need to go down here with Alvin Bragg and Juan Merchan, and you need to go try to bag Trump. Crazy that happened, and we don't talk about it. The White House visit, okay, Reid Hoffman. He funded the LinkedIn billionaire. You guys have heard his name before. Funds every sort of left-wing outlet there is. Okay, he bankrolls the E. Jean Carroll case. The E. Jean Carroll case is the most ridiculous case you've ever read in your life. If you don't laugh, if you read my recounting of that, Sean, we don't have the same sense of humor. It's ridiculous, the stuff she laid out. She also got the best attorneys in the game to defend her, the best Me Too attorneys. How could she afford that as a columnist? Well, she was backed by a billionaire who was trying to destroy Trump on behalf of Joe Biden while he was going to the White House 5 times in 2022 alone. That's just 3 of the cases. Every single one of them has a connection like that. And we've been way too casual about this. This is a massive scandal, the biggest of the century, I believe, and no one's been held to account yet.
All right, I want to talk about holding people accountable. And the first is I want to name check. You brought up Letitia James. She's the New York Attorney General.
Yeah.
We now find out that both her and Adam Schiff separately lied on mortgage forms to get preferential treatment. They lied about their home of residence, right? Mm-hmm. I think Tish James said Virginia. Obviously, she's the New York Attorney General. Adam Schiff has a Maryland home he claimed was his primary residence to get a lower interest rate when clearly he's a senator from California. I think he was a representative at the time. Do you think, based on your reporting and all of the sources that you have in this area, that we're going to hold these folks accountable for that?
It's hard to know, but I feel much more encouraged now. It feels like people are getting very aggressive on this. And I think that people are understanding that part of MAGA, one of the essential components of it, is not just that we're going to close the border and we're going to rip up NAFTA and fix global trade and we're going to get out of foreign wars. There's an element of promises made, promises kept. And I think the Epstein saga was really interesting because I always had low hopes that we get a lot of clarity on that. But I think really what the base punished the Trump administration for, at least online, was that we were given the impression pretty clearly that we're getting the Epstein files part 1. And that means there's going to be a part 2. There's no part 1 without a part 2. And part 1 kind of nothing in it. And then they wouldn't release any more. And that's when people got outraged. I think they understand promises made, promises kept. And what were we promised? We were promised justice. We were promised people were going to get held to account. We were promised that they were going to restore law and order. And when you start seeing people like Tish James, who's trying to bust Trump for falsifying the values of property, and in the meantime, she's listing inaccurately how many units are in her rental properties and where her primary home is, presumably to get a tax benefit, and saying, "Oh, it was a clerical mistake." None of that makes any sense to me, and she should be held to account. The Schiff stuff is fresh for me and wasn't a focus of my research. So, but he's a deeply dishonest guy. He's one of the few guys on earth, Sean. I bet if you pinned him down, he'd still tell you the Russia collusion hoax was real. He's clinging to it. He believes it. He really believes Russia tried to rig that election, despite everyone telling us they didn't. So I'm all for all the aggression necessary, so long as it's legal.
But here's the thing: they go after Trump on a phony, made up bookkeeping charge that had no victim, right? Yeah. And he paid the bottom line is he paid his attorney, Michael Cohen, money that he used for a legal settlement. Okay. Yeah. Again, you may not like the tawdry nature of it, et cetera, but I still don't, to this day, understand the legal issue. She lied on a federal form about how, okay, so she can call it a mistake. Trump was very open and honest about what he did, and they made up a charge on him. She actually admits that she lied on the form. Now she's claiming it was a mistake, to which I don't understand how you make a mistake when you're the New York elected attorney general and you lie about your residence being in Virginia.
Seems unlikely.
That's all right. But let's move on to the other. You brought up the Russia hoax. Okay. Yeah. You've name checked Clapper and Comey and Brennan and all these guys. So let's just start with this. Based on what you've written, if you were advising people of that era, who should be getting a lawyer right now, a criminal attorney? Who are your top 5?
Okay, so my top 1 was Letitia James, which was really amazing because I called for her to get investigated for conspiracy against rights, and they announced the investigation 3 days later. My number 2 is Juan Merchan. I got a big piece.
So you think that she should explain what you mean by conspiracy of right? I don't know what that means.
Sure. So she conspired to make sure Donald Trump did not have his civil rights. Okay. And I think that's the main point. And by targeting the targeted prosecution, she pursued him because she didn't like him politically. She ran on that to advance her career. She prosecuted him for the proverbial victimless crime. There was no crime, but there were no victims of it. She blatantly undervalued Mar-a-Lago's worth in order to further the crime. She had these illicit White House visits while she was doing this. She treated Trump like he was a criminal, even though it was a civil court. Now, a civil court, usually the civil cases are brought by a aggrieved party who perceives that they were done wrong. No, that didn't happen here. There were no complaints against Trump. She said that Trump, I guess it was bad for the country or something because of the loans he got, even though none of the banks complained. The banks loved him. And then she finally, and this is maybe the clearest example, it was a cruel and unusual punishment. So you can't leverage a $464 million fine when there were no complaints. You can't do that. There's nothing in the Eighth Amendment that says that it has to be a criminal case for cruel and unusual punishment. So it's clearly it's the definition of unusual and the definition of cruel. So obviously she was just trying to get Trump for political purposes. And so she's number 1 by a mile. I like Juan Merchan on this list as well. And I've got a big piece coming up at Breitbart. It might be up by the time this airs. But he blocked key Trump witnesses. He, I think, violated Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights because Trump was never informed of the nature of his crime, which you alluded to earlier, which a lot of people don't get this, that Trump was told that there was some business record violations, but he was not informed the nature of the second crime. There's actually a tertiary crime. This is the most convoluted thing I had to explain in the book. I think I do a decent job of it, and there did not even have to be unanimity for the conviction on the third crime. And this was his mechanism for bumping up what would have been a misdemeanor, but the statute of limitations expired, up to a felony. You can't just do this stuff. You can't just decide we're going to make this a felony because Alvin Bragg's really passionate about it, which is what they tried to do. And Merchan let it all happen, at the same time making sure that Trump could not bring in the witnesses he wanted and not bring in the evidence he wanted. All of that is denying due process. So that is one that seems like a big no-no. in that regard. There's also gag orders that I think were unfair. Trump is still under a gag order in that court. Yes, that's real. Also his daughter is not just, you can't punish the parents for the crimes of the family, but his daughter is a mega bundler for Democrats. She's one of the biggest fundraisers for Democrats, period. When we're talking about, if my kids ever do anything stupid, Sean, I'm sure they will. I don't want people to punish me for it, but this is someone who has $100+ million in campaign donations she collected in this election cycle. And your dad's the judge on a criminal case for the guys at the top of the ticket for the other party. Come on, you're gonna be kidding me. This country's better than that, or at least I thought we were. So, and he also made an illegal campaign donation as well. It was a small donation, but it's clearly illegal. As far as I can tell, was never investigated. So he's my number 2, and boy, can I go on.
I want you to go on because I'm shocked. Like I want it now. I'm like, because I think the average person who, I mean, and I say this respectfully to people, obviously when you write a book like you did, you've done a lot more investigating as to, okay, so, and the level of detail you brought to number 1 and number 2 here, I see why. But how come Comey, Brennan, and Clapper aren't at the top of your list?
Yeah, just because they're Russiagate. So I see that a little bit as a parallel track to what I'm on. But but it's not that they're not equally bad, if not worse. Maybe they're worse. It's just, I've been in the mindset more of the specific Trump cases, but I have a connection here, which is really, really, really important. The one criminal conviction of Donald Trump, the convicted felon case that Juan Merchan made sure remained a convicted felon case with Trump at that scarlet branding, which again, I can't believe this. Merchan made sure to basically wash his hands of the case. I go into all the details during the transition so that Trump would have to choose if he wants to appeal during his presidency, which was another dirty trick, so that he would carry that scarlet convicted felon branding throughout his presidency, which I think is totally illegitimate and should be looked into. But here's the key thing with this case. This case never would have happened without Russiagate. Part of the reason that this case ended up in a conviction, if not the main reason, was testimony from Michael Cohen, Trump's fixer, former attorney. Maybe you know him, Sean. It's the reason why they got access to his Gmail was it started with the Russia collusion probe. The hoax Russia collusion probe was when Robert Mueller, DOJ, all these places started to access information from Cohen, and he was a rat. He would sing, he would take trade deals. And all of this led to a lot of information that presumably violated attorney-client privilege, which Cohen shouldn't have done. But all this originated with the Russiagate hoax. So if there had been no Russiagate hoax, there would have been no convicted felon branding for Trump. Isn't that interesting?
But that's why I think Comey, Brennan, Clapper go higher on my list, because everything, what do they say in the legal world? It's fruit of the poison tree. Like none of it could have happened had they not done this. And I also believe, frankly, that it's for me, it's personal, as I've told the audience before. I mean, like time, money, branding that all went into Mueller, etc. But also, like, you destroyed the first term of a president of the United States.
Yes, exactly right.
And frankly, it's not just about Trump. It's for all of the things that he could have done to make the country better and stronger.
And the voters, they hate democracy, right? I mean, it's like the voters, we didn't get what we voted for.
But you think about like a guy like Jeff Sessions, whose life was destroyed, Mike Flynn, all these other people who had their lives destroyed because of this. And Trump, I mean, look, I got to be honest, if I'm Trump, right, one of the things that I said, Alex, early on, that people always, remember during the first term, it was always like, I can't believe that Trump is meeting privately with Comey. And I said to people, you guys don't understand, the first meeting that they had, of which I was there, right, Donald Trump, now President-elect Trump, is sitting at Trump Tower, and at the end of the meeting, we're all in there, there's about 10 of us, Comey stands up and says, Mr. President-elect, can I see you privately? Now, think about it. If you're not from government, you've never run for anything, you've never had you go, oh, so this is how it works. You just say, let's meet privately, and we go and we meet privately. And then when Trump does it to Comey, everyone goes, that's so inappropriate. And I'm like, wait a second. Trump learned it from Comey, right? But you look at these guys and what they did. And so I think it's also, again, it's not just the money, it's the time, but it's also like going forward. If you're Trump, you go, wait, I gotta be a little careful, because look at the lawfare, right? So when you scare people into not doing anything and undermine them, right? You prevent things from happening, and you slowed the Trump agenda down. So everything that you write about, I think, is central to understanding how big of a game changer this Russia hoax was. They literally weaponized intelligence and undermined the first term of a president of the United States. And then that led to all the other stuff that you're talking about. If you, the magnitude of this is so incomprehensible.
That's right, Sean. And this is really, so the book, I think, serves a couple of functions. The main one, the primary one, is the investigations are going to take place. They're starting. We've got 2 announced in the last week. Jack Smith, whose position was unconstitutional, and Tish James. And you're going to want a primer on these cases because there's going to be more investigations. They're going to be sent into the news. And to understand the injustice that was carried out against Donald Trump, against his voters, and it'll give you a lot of predicate for when these investigations take place. I think I've done a service in that regard. But I'll tell you, the other thing that I think is really meaningful to me that I tried to do is warn people the lawfare superstructure is at work 24/7, trying to undermine this country and trying to fight against this movement that Donald Trump leads. And us not getting the memo in 2016 and sufficiently dealing with it, which we tried our best, but we didn't succeed in destroying it. That's what led to the lawfare of 2024, which Trump, because he's such rhinoceros skin, because frankly, he's so strong and he has so much money and he's so fearless. There's all these things that went into his character that allowed for him to survive that. No one else on earth would have survived that onslaught. And if he had lost, then they would have hijacked the presidency from us. And just know they're going to try to do it again. And it's incumbent upon us to stay in that wartime footing, to make sure we're engaged 24/7, we're civically active, that we're tough, and that we have the best arguments. All of that's necessary because they are working right now to defeat us, and we need to be aware of that.
All right, the last thing I want to ask you, though, is tangential to that. If there's one takeaway, is it that it's getting better or worse? Or, I mean, I get your point about being vigilant.
Yeah.
But if there's something, if I read Breaking the Law, what is the one takeaway that I want to have in terms of understanding the current system or protecting myself going forward?
If you're a person of power and you read it, if you're in Washington, if you're someone with authority, then we need to have the toughest, most conservative people who are fearless, who are not cowed by the media, and who are willing to work tirelessly to execute on an agenda, who are not reactionary but are proactive, showing real leadership. But if you're a citizen, what's most important for you is to stay engaged 24/7. We need to get involved in judges' races. We need to be more active in our communities. We need to make sure that we have more persuasive arguments. We need to make sure that we're touching more people in our community. We're talking to them about these issues and why they matter. And that we're not sitting out elections because maybe our favorite pet issue got kicked down to the back burner or second or third tier. We need to stay engaged because the stakes are that high. They're trying to hijack our country right now. I lay out a comprehensive case. They tried to hijack the 2020 election. It was a rigging at an unprecedented level. And the fact that Donald Trump was literally touched by God and allowed to win from that with divine intervention, clearly divine intervention, then they might have hijacked the whole country. And so we need to be aware of that. And we need to be prepared for battles yet to come.
Right. The book is Breaking the Law. The author is Breitbart's editor-in-chief, Alex Marlow. Thanks for being with us and kicking off the week. I really appreciate it.
Sean, this is really fun, and congrats on all the great shows. I love the other show as well.
Thank you very much. Take care. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Remember, go to SeanSpicer.com to sign up. We've got a big week ahead of us. John Solomon Wednesday, Robert Cahaley Friday. We'll see you back here on the show tomorrow. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.